Hey, hello everybody. How you doing? I'm gonna make some English muffins or crumpets. If you want to add extra milk, it's crumpets. All right, now first of all, I have a couple problems with this video. One is I don't have a clue what I'm doing with this program. And two is I'm just stupid. I thought the recipe here, I thought it was straight up and down, but obviously it isn't. And I don't know how to flip it around in the program. I know you can, I just don't know how to do it. So let me read it to you. For English muffins, it's 1 cup of water, a half cup of scalded milk, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt. Then you need 1 pack of yeast, dry active yeast. If you don't have a package, if you have it in a large bulk, then it's 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. All right, 2 tablespoons of warm water, 2 cups of sifted flour, 3 tablespoons of butter, room temperature, and then 2 cups of sifted flour again. All right, now what you do is this. You put the cup of water, the scalded milk, the 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of salt into a bowl. Now look, you don't want to use a dough hook. You just want to, actually if you use your hand it's even better. You don't want to beat this like you would if you were making bread. See, when you're making bread, what you want to do is you want to build up gluten when you're making bread, because gluten is the elasticity of the bread. It's the glue. It holds everything together. Gluten is actually a protein that when you need it, the protein molecules they strengthen, they get stronger. So in other words, now they're getting more elasticy. They get stronger and they get longer. So the longer you beat it, the stronger the molecules are, and the longer they are. So in other words, if you want bread with small bubbles, you beat the bread with a dough hook for approximately 10 minutes. And that's what happens. What you're doing is you're building up the gluten, you're building up the elasticity, and as the yeast gives off its byproduct, it's going to help the bubbles form, and not big bubbles. They're going to be small bubbles. So you're going to have a real nice texture to the bread. Here, wait, let me show you something. Hold on. Okay, when I worked in the bakery, I mostly worked on decorating cakes. That's what I did for the most part. However, I did do some bench work, and bench work is stuff like bread and Danish, coffee cakes, stuff like that. They call that bench work. All right. Now, when we made bread, what the bakers always looked for was the gluten content. So what they would do is they would reach down to the bottom of the mixing bowl and they would grab a little chunk of dough and they would, bring it out, and they would check to see how far you could stretch the dough before it started to break. Okay, so I have 2 examples of that. The first one coming up looks like some kind of wheat bread, and the finer the grind of the flour is, you're going to get the best results as far as gluten. If it's a thicker grind, a bigger grind, then you're not going to be able to stretch it as much as if you use a real fine flour. Okay, so this is what they did. They stretched the dough like this, And if the dough like this right here looks very good, you know what I mean? There's a lot of gluten in this bread right here that this woman is making. But anyway, that was an indication of how much longer you had to beat the dough. Now, the weird thing is when you add more flour, let's say you beat this dough for 10 minutes with the dough hook. And then after 10 minutes you say, oh, it's a little bit too moist, I'm going to add more flour. Well, now you got to start all over again as far as the gluten goes. You got to start, you got to do your 10 minutes again after you add flour to it. So don't add any flour. Try not to add any flour to it. Because like I said, you're going to have to start over again. All right, now here's another example. This looks more like white bread here, or some kind of rolls or something. But anyway, you can see how it's stretching before it breaks. And that means there's a high content of gluten. You've done your job as far as the gluten goes. Everything, it looks like this is ready to proof. Anyway, that's what the bakers checked for whenever we were making bread. They always checked for the gluten. Now, with English muffins, as you notice that the bubbles are real big when you open up an English muffin. All right, what that means is that there's not a lot of gluten built up in the dough. So, when you mix this recipe, you do not use a dough hook. Like I say, you're best just using your hand and just mixing the dough by hand. You don't want to build up gluten in an English muffin or a crumpet. You do not want to do it. Okay, so you don't want a lot of gluten built up in an English muffin or a crumpet. You want it to be a short crumb. A short crumb is like a cookie. A cookie crumbles. No pun intended. But that's called a short crumb. If you beat that dough before you bake it, if you overmix it, it won't do that. It won't be a short crumb. It'll be the crumbs will be bigger. Yeah, well, anyway, that's how shortbreads get their name, because of the crumb. All right, so anyway, you don't want a lot of gluten. Mix it by hand. Don't, if you can, don't use a machine. Okay, so now look, I've made this recipe before, and what they want you to do is they want you to mix the water, the sugar, the salt, the yeast, after you dissolve it, and 2 cups of flour. They want you to mix that together and let that sit for 30 minutes. Well, and then take it and add the butter and the 2 extra cups of flour, and then you want it to proof for an hour and a half. All right, look, I made it easier. I tried them both ways, and I can't figure out why why you want to mix that first and let it sit. I didn't see any difference in the batter at all, in the dough. So I just consolidated everything here. So in other words, here's what you're going to do. You're going to scald the milk. All right, then you're going to put a cup of water, the sugar, the salt, the milk, the 4 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of butter, and the yeast. You're going to add it all together all at once. And then you're only going to mix it until it's mixed. Do not beat it. Don't beat it. Only mix it until it's mixed. All right, then you're going to let it sit. You're going to let it proof for an hour and a half. Okay, after that, then you're going to separate it and put it into English muffin pans, or actually you don't even need that. You can just eyeball the muffins, just figure out how big you want the muffins, and then just put them onto a baking pan, a cookie pan or whatever they call that. You can do it that way. Although I do use the muffin pans. I do have those. Now look, when you add the scalded milk, be careful of the yeast. Make sure that the mix, add all that stuff before you add the yeast. Make sure that that mixture is not too hot when you put it all in. All right. That's the yeast there. I've dissolved it in a couple teaspoons of warm water. Okay, let's see what else. I mean, I tell you, you know, like I say, I've tried this a couple times and I've modified it every time. What I did this time was I added a half cup of malt. All right, I have malt which is called diastatic malt. Okay, you can buy it in the store. It's a powder, and it just gives it a little more flavor. You know, it gives it, you know, I'll tell you how I figured that out. Was a buddy of mine, his grandfather owned a Leslie's bakery down here in Florida, and I asked him, they had some really nice hoagie rolls, you know, for steak and cheese. I mean, these rolls were good. Everybody bought these rolls. So I asked him, I said, how, you know, how do they do that? What's the recipe there? And he told me, he said, try adding malt to the bread dough as you're mixing it. So since then, I've been playing around with malt, and it really does make a big difference in the English muffin. You don't get exactly the Thomas English muffin taste. You know, that would probably take you years to figure that out. But it comes up to a very nice taste. I mean, it's very good. and there's nothing, there's no preservatives or nothing in it in this recipe, you know, so it's probably a lot better for you than Thomas's English muffins. Although, don't get me wrong, those things are the best. All right, now look, I'm just using a regular paddle for this. I'm not using a dough hook. So I just want to mix this, you know, a very short time, just enough to combine everything together. All right, now look, there goes the milk. I think I'm gonna the milk overboiled, so I'm gonna add a little bit more milk to it. I think, yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, there, I'm measuring it. It's a little bit short, so I just add a little bit more milk to it. But it is scalded milk, so you know that also is adding to the flavor. Okay, let me see what's going on here. You know, I know it's a lot easier going out and buying a pack of English muffins. But it's just nice when you make them by yourself. You know, you make them homemade, they taste a little better. Now again, like I said, I'm not getting the big bubbles that are in English muffins, those nooks and crannies. You know, I'm not getting that. It's not coming out that way. Also, they taste a lot better the next day. They really do taste, but you know, there's a lot of things that taste better the next day. Like for instance, pumpkin pie is something that sticks in my head. I don't know why, but oh, there goes 3 tablespoons of butter. That's room temperature. Pumpkin pie. You know, you take a piece of pumpkin pie when it first comes out of the oven. It's nothing. You know, I mean, it doesn't taste. I don't know. It's just nothing to it. But put it in the fridge and wait till tomorrow, and oh man, there's such a difference. There's a big difference. Same thing with these English muffins. Excuse me. Now, you know, you don't have to eat these just for breakfast, you know. I mean, they're good anytime. Crumpets. Now look, crumpets are just basically the same thing as an English muffin. If you want to make crumpets, you use 2/3 of a cup of scalded milk instead of a half a cup. And that's the only difference. It's got a little bit more milk to it for a crumpet. Okay. Okay, here we go. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. All right, I'm adding in the yeast. Make sure that the mixture is warm, not hot, from the scalded milk. Chances are it won't be hot, but just, you know, double check. Okay, there's the malt, and like I said, I added approximately a half a cup. Malt is pretty interesting stuff, I'll tell you. It's it's, you know, it could be made from just about any grain. All it is you let the grain germinate, and then once it germinates, now it's usually made from either wheat or barley, but what happens is you let it germinate, and then they dry it, and then they, you know, pulverize it into a powder, and that's malt. So it could be, you know, any grain you want to use. All right, so anyway, there's the dough. As you can see, it's not, you know, it doesn't look like bread dough. I mean, you know, bread dough would be in a ball. It wouldn't be stuck to the bowl like that. Here, all I'm going to do now is take it out of the bowl. I'm going to put some oil into the bowl and then put it back, and then it's going to go on the side. Actually, I put it on top of the oven. I mean, on top of the refrigerator for an hour and a half. Set a timer. All right. Then after the hour and a half, then you can cut it up into small pieces and do whatever you want. If you have the English muffin rings, you know, use that. All right. There's a little olive oil in the bowl. You don't have to wash the bowl out. Okay, and we're going to try to get this stuff together into a ball, the dough. It's very wet, but that's what you want. These muffins seem to be a lot heavier than the Thomas English muffins. You know, Thomas English muffins, there's a lot of air in them. You know, the holes are very big. So, of course, they're going to be lighter. This stuff here is a little bit heavier. The holes are not as big. You know, like I said, if you could figure that out, it would probably take you a couple years, you know, to figure out exactly how they're doing it, how they're, you know, what their process is to make the English muffins. All right, so now what am I doing here? Oh, I got to clean up a little bit. Hold on. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover that mixing bowl up and just let it sit an hour and a half. All right, now look, there's a piece of parchment paper. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to spray it real lightly with the spray stuff. And then I'm going to coat it with cornmeal. Okay? The only reason I sprayed it was so that the cornmeal would stick to it. You know, I want an even layer of cornmeal. All right, there we go. Okay, then I'm going to put the English muffin rings on the cookie pan, cookie sheet, yeah, and then I'm just going to hit those with a real light spray. Usually the muffins don't stick to those rings. Usually it doesn't happen, but you know, a little light spray will help. There we go. Okay. All right. Now we're going to have a nice even coating on the bottom of the cornmeal. Okay. You know, there's two ways to cook these. One is you can do what I just did there. Or, and I do it both ways on this video. You can take the dough and cut them into individual muffins, put them on another sheet with cornmeal on the bottom, but don't use the rings. Just put the dough on to the sheet. You don't need the rings. If you don't have the rings, don't panic. You know, you don't need them. All right, then what you do is, once they proof, then you take them off of the cookie sheet very carefully with the spatula, and you put them into a cast iron skillet on top of the stove. I actually do that here. What I did was I put the cast iron skillet into the oven and got it nice and hot. Oh, by the way, the oven is at 425. All right, now that's going on top of the fridge, and an hour and a half, and I'll be back. See you. Okay. This video is way too long, so I'm going to speed the whole thing up. All right, there you see the dough now is proofed. All right, take it out. Okay. Now what you're going to do is I'm going to cut them so that it fills up those rings halfway. Now you can see the dough is still very moist, very wet. All right, now there you go. Just try to, you know, form them into a round circle. Okay, plop them inside the rings. You can get the rings on Amazon, or I don't know. Yeah, you might be able to get them at a store. I don't know. I bought mine on Amazon a long time ago. Okay, there we go. All right, now we're gonna proof these again. And what I do for a proof box, what I do is I just use a regular box. Look, it's a regular box. I put them in there, and I set them on top of the stove. And the oven is on now, so that on top, you know, the top of the stove is nice and warm. So I leave them up there until they double in size. I can't really give you a time on that. I don't really know. All right, now here's the ones I don't have a ring for. All right, there's some more cornmeal. There's only one problem making them this way, is it's hard to control the heat on the cast iron cast iron skillet. It's hard. You know, I mean, you know, you can make them too dark. In fact, I think that's what I did here. I made them too dark. However, this is how Thomas does his English muffins. They do brown them in a pan of some type, and they probably finish them in the oven, but they do start them out. All right, anyway, yeah, they brown them in a pan and probably finish them in the oven. Okay, there were the English muffins that are in the ring. You could see they doubled and they're going into the oven. All right, here they're coming out. Now, the real dark ones there are the ones that I did in the cast iron skillet. They are too dark. That's what I was saying, is that they, you know, it's hard to regulate that heat. It's, you know. Anyway, now you can see they're not, the bubbles aren't real big, but the bubbles are bigger than they would be just for regular bread. Okay, and the malt really gives it a good flavor. The malt is very nice. I love the malt in there. I'm going to keep doing the malt. Again, here's another one. Now, again, the bubbles aren't huge, but they're there and they're nice. Now, once you re-toast them, oh man, they are so good. All right, anyway, if you stuck around this long, congratulations. And I will see everybody later. Thanks for watching, and I gotta go. I gotta eat.